Hi guys, it's Cameron, and in this lesson, in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to land high-paying tech roles that you're actively after. Now, this is going to be a free training, so I'm going to be detailing to you everything you need to know to ultimately break into tech and the ideal roles that you're going for. Now, if you're new to who I am potentially, or maybe even if you know a little bit about me, so who I am, so I'm a 23-year-old ex-Apple engineer. So I used to work at Apple and being an engineer from the ages of 20 to 23. I have a first-class computer science degree, multiple industry certifications, and published computer science research. Now, as I've mentioned, this training is going to outline everything that you need to know and how ultimately I managed to get into a position that I am into today, so you can help replicate that exact same success. Now, I've actually included a bit of proof here to show you guys here as well. So on the left-hand side, we've got my offer letter from Apple. So congratulations, Cameron, and it's for the engineering role. I then also was given some merch when I was an intern and a graduate. So as you can see here, I got a plaque, I got some AirPods, a backpack, some water bottles and things like that. This was the compensation that I was on as a 21-year-old graduate, so close to 6 figures. So as you can see, here's my salary, and then here's also the compensation that I was on for RSUs as well. So the actual stocks that you'll get given. I've got my degree here, so as you can see, first class, and then also this is a photo of me and the Apple team, which is AIS, Apple Information Security. So let's actually talk about the training now that the proof's out of the way. So with this free training is going to allow you to know the following. So it's going to be to outline a clear structured process to break into tech, and specifically what to know and what to expect at each and every step along the way, all the way up until getting hired. It's also going to identify the current bottlenecks that you currently have, so the problems that you're stuck on that you're not too sure how to solve. We're going to outline all of those and also how to solve those here as well. Alongside also gearing you up to be a top candidate in the job market for the tech roles that you're specifically looking for, regardless of niche, and to outcompete all of the other candidates there are in the candidate pool. Now, in terms of some common myths, there's some common myths in tech, and you may be familiar with some of them, you may even potentially believe in some of them. So I'm actually here to dispel them all here for you today. So for the common myths about tech, it's a common myth that you need a degree to break into tech. You need to go to get a bachelor's, maybe even a master's to break into tech. Maybe you feel like you need experience as well. So do you need experience for these types of roles? And how do you even get that experience in the first place? That you may need to know everything about tech in general and have a really, really strong technical skill set and be one of the best in the industry. Or maybe you feel like you need to be naturally smart to even break into tech at all. Maybe you feel like the tech industry is only reserved for incredibly smart, naturally smart people, and there's no way that you will ever break in. Well, if you think about any of these and you actually believe any of these or have thought about believing them in the past, I'm actually here to tell you that none of these are actually true. You don't need a degree to break into tech. There's plenty of people who break into tech without a degree, and they don't even need like a master's or even a PhD. Some don't even have bachelors. You do not need a degree to break into tech. Now, another one, you do not need experience as well, because if you need experience to break into tech, well then how comes all of the people who are currently already in tech, such as myself, how did we manage to obtain our roles then? Because everybody starts from somewhere, right? Everybody starts from zero experience. So how did those people get those roles? So that is proof that this is of course a myth, and you don't actually need experience to break into tech. Of course it can help, but you definitely do not need it. Now, you do not also need to know everything under the sun technical wise. You do not need to be one of the top engineers to ultimately get 6-figure tech jobs and the ideal tech roles that you're looking for. Because if that's the case, then it's going to be incredibly hard to find anybody because there's always more to learn. Now, you also do not need to be naturally smart, and I can actually speak from proven experience with this one. So I'm not naturally smart by any means. I have to revise, I have to study loads to ultimately, curate systems or develop my knowledge further. And I used to be in class at school, when I was in school, where I would be surrounded by people who were naturally smart, right? They would look at a textbook after about 5 minutes and know every single thing on that page without ever needing to go home and study or anything like that. So I'm not naturally smart, and I can say this from a proven testimony, or like a personal testimony of myself, that you do not need to be naturally smart. to actually break into tech, alongside any of these here, right? You don't need a degree, experience, or be technically smart in terms of every single realm to break into tech. So those are the common myths that there are in tech. So it's nice to know that those aren't actually true. But I'll tell you what companies will not tell you, right? I'm actually going to kind of blow this out of the water because companies will not tell you this. So companies, they don't have a perfect candidate in mind, but they do have an idea of what an ideal candidate for them would look like. So ultimately, to break into tech, we need to position ourselves like their ideal candidate, right? And we can actually replicate this process over and over again, as I have done with many, many students, to ultimately get them to land their ideal tech roles that they're looking for. So let's actually break down how you can turn into the ideal candidate and position yourself correctly to be hired in tech for the roles that you truly are desiring. So it starts with step one. Step one is the vision. And the reason why this is step one is because we need to actually understand where we're aiming for as the end goal. If you don't know where you're aiming for, there's plenty of different avenues that you can accidentally go off road on and go to a completely different area than your end goal. If you don't know where the end goal is, right, there's going to be plenty of avenues that you can take instead. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're in a car and you want to just go somewhere. So you're following the highway, but you're not too sure where the end goal is. You may arrive in London, you may arrive somewhere else, right? If you continue on that path, there's going to be plenty of different cut-offs from that highway where you can actually take them off, right? And because you have no end goal, you're not actually going to be thinking, does this get me to my end goal or not? Because you're not going to have an end goal in mind. So you may actually divert and come off of the highway and go down a completely different route that leads to a dead end and nowhere near your end goal, because you didn't actually understand what your end goal was to begin with. So that is very important to understand, and this is why step one is so important, because you need to actually visualize and envision what your end goal will look like. Now, in terms of this, there's a few different areas that you can consider. So here are some of them on the screen here. So the first one is going to be the companies. What companies do you want to ideally work for in the future? Is it Apple, such as myself? Is it another company? And also specifically the types of companies as well. So what kind of industries are they in? And I'll give you some examples. So with Apple, well, that belongs to FANG, right? Big tech, so to speak. Do you want to go into fintech, which is finance technology? So kind of like trading firms, investment banks, that kind of stuff. Do you want to go into aeronautics? So maybe SpaceX, NASA, those types of companies, AI companies like Anthropic and ChatGPT, startup companies, so on and so forth. So you can have a dream company in mind, but also understand the type of industry that it belongs to as well. Now, this can ultimately help you in terms of visualizing where you want to end up and what roles to potentially take that come along your way as well, because you'll know exactly if it goes towards your end goal or not. Now, it may also be salary as well. Maybe one of your main motivating drivers to break into tech is to be on a high salary. So maybe you want to be on 6 figures, maybe you want to have really high compensation where you've got stock options and performance-based bonuses and that kind of stuff. Then maybe salary would be a key part for you as well. Now, one of the key parts is going to be role as well, right? So with the salary and companies out of the way for now, thinking about the role, right? What do you ultimately want to do on the day-to-day? Do you even know what you want to do on the day-to-day, right? And this is something that you would need to research and look into, because you want to make sure that you're choosing the roles that you actually want to be in for the long term and not just ones just for now. So then you actually have the career progression for those roles in the future. For example, let's say that you wanted to be a software engineer. Well, that would be a role, right? You're going to be engineering software, developing it and building it and testing it over time. So you know that you want to have that. So for example, let's say that you was given an IT support role. Well, you can be like, well, okay, well, my end goal is software engineering, and that's exactly what I wanted for my particular role. So maybe I may not choose this option, right? So that's why it's so important to also understand the role that you ultimately want for the future and also for the long term. You can, of course, switch between different roles, but it's important to make sure that you understand the role that you truly want to be in and the one will ultimately make you happy and fulfilled in life as well. Also, it's going to be general things as well, like for example, work-life balance. So is there good work-life balance there, or are you just work? For example, is it going to be hybrid, fully remote? Is it going to be on-site? and also the benefits that you can have as well. So is it going to have private healthcare, private dental care? Is it going to extend to your family? Are you going to have some sort of pension contribution, and is it going to be a large amount from the company's kind of perspective? That kind of stuff as well, to ultimately find the benefits. Is it going to have free food, free drink, that kind of stuff? And step one is so important, because once you actually understand all of these things, you know your end goal so vividly that there's nothing that can actually take you off of the path. Now, I know it may sound like this is just kind of like a mindset thing, but this is so important. This is the first step that I personally took to get into the position that I'm into today. And it's so important because if you don't know where you're going, there's plenty of different things that will kind of take your mind off of it and have shiny object syndrome, which is basically where you think, oh, that's a nice thing, let's go and pursue that. Oh, that's a nice thing, let's go and pursue that. And in the end, you just get stuck not knowing what to do, where to focus on, and what ultimately to achieve, because you had no end goal in mind to begin with. So step number one is going to be vision. And once you've done that, we can then move on to step two. So in terms of breaking into tech, step two is all about building. This is going to be building out the infrastructure that you can then rely on confidently to support you as a candidate. And it's going to often cover some of the following below. So it's going to be your CV, so your curriculum vitae. It's going to be your cover letter, your job applications themselves for when you actually do apply to roles, your portfolios, and the projects that are listed on your portfolios as well. And what I've done for you is I've actually broken down all of these into different steps. So let's actually cover them here now. So the first one is going to be your CV. So for your CV, you want to make sure that it's very clear. So it's very easily readable, and there's nothing that kind of distracts or takes away from the value that you're trying to portray. It's very to the point as well, meaning that it's not going to be a narrative or a story, but you're ultimately just kind of pinpointing exactly what you've worked on, what you've accomplished and done, opposed to taking them on a massive journey through your experience. So for example, instead of saying something like, so between this day and this day, I worked in this team for this role, and I developed this, and I built a CI/CD pipeline, and I integrated XYZ APIs and this kind of stuff. Instead of saying all of that, which is essentially what a story is, a narrative, you want to be very to the point, meaning that you basically just say kind of like the end goal and what you'd use to leverage that end goal. So for example, I built a front-end web application using SQLite's back-end database with 3 different APIs of X, Y, and Z, and I use this programming language. So saying that, it's very to the point, it's very easy to understand, and it's ultimately going to portray the value correctly to recruiters and hiring managers so they can actually keep their attention whilst they're reading your CV. You have to remember that they're going to be going through many CVs a day. Some recruiters are going to go through 50 CVs a day. So they don't have time to go through a story for each and every one of them. That's why you need to make it very clear, concise, and also to the point. Now for your CV, you also want to lead by value as well. The more value that you can demonstrate that you've either A, provided in the past and created, or B, what you can provide to the company that you're wishing to be hired by, it ultimately makes them want to hire you more. So lead by value, don't lead by your personal characteristics, don't lead by your hobbies, don't lead by buzzwords, ultimately lead by value. So what have you done in the past, and how can you map it and correlate it to ideally what companies are looking for right now, the ones that you want to be hired for. Now, alongside this, speak as I. Speak as an individual person, not as a team. So on your CV, it's your CV, right? It's personal to you. So it shouldn't be about what the companies have done and what they've developed. It should only be about what you've personally done. So for example, if you helped with a project, you're simply mentioning that project and what you worked on, what you did, what you implemented, the technologies that you used, that kind of stuff. And you're not saying, in our team, we did this, or in our team, we did that. You want to make it extremely specific and personal to you. And the reason for that is because companies aren't going to be hiring the entire department from the team that you belong to. They're only going to be hiring you. So that's why you speak as I, and you want to make it as personal as possible for your CV. Now for your cover letter, it's very straightforward. You want to make sure that it's simple. You also want to make your cover letter 1 page as well. And the reason for that is because your cover letter, right, essentially the purpose of it is a prerequisite to preface your CV, right? So it's only to kind of introduce you as a candidate and then to redirect their attention to your CV. So you don't actually need to really say a whole bunch for it. All you're basically saying is why you applied, and why you feel like you would be a good fit. That's pretty much it. So that's why it's simple, that's why it's one page, and it's very to the point. You probably need about 2 paragraphs max, just basically explaining why you applied and why you feel like you would be a good fit for that particular role. So that's what you need for your cover letter. Now, for your portfolios, you're going to need a clear structure for them. So when you have recruiters and hiring managers going to your portfolios, wherever they're hosted, and ultimately going through the projects on them, they need to be able to have a clear structure so they know where to go to find what projects, to demonstrate what skill sets and that kind of stuff. Your portfolio should also be niche specific. So for the niche that you're going for, you should only really have portfolios and projects on those for those particular niches. So if you're going into data science, you mainly only have data science projects. For cybersecurity, you only have cybersecurity, so on and so forth. And that's to ultimately make sure that you are actually showcasing the right skill sets and not just a mixture of a whole bunch of them. You also want to make sure that your portfolios are custom and also personal as well. The more customized they are, it shows that you've actually put in more effort and work to them. And the more personal that they are, it's easier to be remembered and build trust with the companies as well, because they can actually see kind of your personality behind the work that you've done. Now, for your projects, it's going to be niche specific, as I've mentioned above, but it's also going to be real world as well. Now, usually it's quite hard for candidates to understand what real world impactful projects are because they're not in the industry yet. So I'm actually just going to drop some game here for you guys and just provide you some information and examples of real world projects. So anything dealing with KPIs, so key performance indicators, which is essentially what management will use in corporate to track on performance and behavior. If you have anything that kind of deals with those, like KPI dashboards and metrics and stuff like that, that can be very useful as a real world practical project. Same as also automations as well. If you find like a manual process that takes a long time to do, especially with like anything, let's say for example, Excel, if you can create some sort of automation there that does it automatically for you without manual intervention, then that can ultimately help kind of make additional better projects that are more real world, more impactful, and showcasing off the right skill sets there as well. Now, that was step 2. So now step 3 is going to be deployment. So actually deploying the infrastructure that we've just built and making sure that we are generating results for them as well. So the first part is going to be applying and also recruiters. So essentially what you're going to be doing in this step is going to be actually applying for the roles that you actually want. And that's going to be based on step 1, the vision. So with step 1, the vision, you identified your end goal, your ideal role, the ideal companies, that kind of stuff, and the surrounding information. So in this case, you're then going to be actually applying for those roles. So you can be finding them online and actually applying for those particular roles. Now you're also going to be leveraging recruiters in this step as well. So in step 3, deployment, is going to be about leveraging recruiters to ultimately find better positions and ones that are actually open that aren't actually listed as job postings, which were found here. So this is going to allow you to expand your scope and horizons for jobs that you can therefore then apply to, whilst also leveraging recruiters to be able to do that. Now, in terms of these 2 steps, so step 1, step 2 here for the 3-step process, these 2 are going to lead into interviews, right? And that's going to be most of the time. That's ultimately the end goal from applying and also using recruiters to ultimately get those interviews. So in terms of what those interviews will look like, well, what you should be doing is the following. So this is going to be before the interview here, and then this is going to be during the interview. So before the interview, you want to actually do some research. You want to research a few of the key aspects that are going to make you stand out as a candidate and set you up for success when you are actually to perform in those interviews. So it's going to be researching the company and specific details regarding the company as well. So you're familiar with them, you understand what they do and that kind of stuff, because they may potentially ask you questions on that. And that's genuinely, like, this is speaking from experience, but if you ever draw a blank at "so what do you know about the company" type question, it's going to be setting off the interview at a very bad kind of start and experience from the start, right? So you want to always make sure that you do have an answer to this and more information regarding the company. Alongside this, you want to also make sure that you've actually reread the JD, the job description, and you are familiar with the roles, requirements, and responsibilities for this particular role here that you've applied for, and you're also familiar with your CV as well. In most interviews, they want to go through your CV and what you've put on there, maybe even your portfolios as well. So make sure that you understand them very well. So for your CV, it's going to be things like certifications, projects, things that you've worked on in the past, previous experience, skill sets, that kind of stuff. Really anything that's on your CV, they may potentially ask you follow-up questions regarding it. So make sure that you've actually brushed over your CV again, looked into them, and just kind of make sure that you can actually answer any questions that they may potentially ask you about it. Now that's actually before the interview, right? That's the preparation before the interview. Once you're actually in the interview, it's going to be about your performance. So with your performance, it's important to make sure that you actually have clear answers to their questions and you don't try to BS them. Companies and hiring managers, recruiters, employees, they know very clearly when someone doesn't know the answer. So it's important to have clear answers that are very to the point and you're not kind of taking them on like a massive loop back journey where you don't actually answer their question. And make sure that you're very honest as well, right? It's more of a conversation in tech interviews more than an actual kind of interrogation, right? So you can actually be honest, right? If they ask you a question at a deep level and you're not too familiar with the answer, feel free to just say that. Just say, I'm not too familiar with this topic at that level at the moment, but I'm more than happy to do some additional research after the interview so that I am. Something like that, just keeping it honest and transparent with clear answers as well can ultimately help you stand out and actually perform your best. It's also going to be going through, and this is going to be the main structure of most technical interviews, but it's going to be going through your CV first. So you're going to have an introduction with them for about 5 minutes. From there, they're going to then want to pull up your CV on their end, actually go through your CV, ask you some questions regarding it, what you've done, why you've done it, what problems that it solves, that kind of stuff. And then from there, they're going to then lead into basic questions. So these are going to be basic technical questions that are going to be things for your particular niche. So make sure that you are familiar with your technical knowledge and you have brushed up on that as well. That's also, once again, a part of the research part with your CV. So make sure that you do understand basics of some of the questions that are technical that they may potentially ask. And then from there, it then leads into, for the rest of the interview, a scenario-based questions. So they'll give you some scenarios and they want you to see how your mindset operates for those questions. It's not necessarily about kind of your answer. Of course, you do kind of have to get the answer correct, but it's more so about your mindset and methodology towards problems that ultimately makes candidates stand out. So make sure that you've got a solid methodology for handling scenario-based questions so then you know exactly how to answer them when you are asked them. Now, in terms of the process for interviews and interview loops, it's going to look like the following. So you're going to either apply directly to the company, so HR, or you're going to be speaking with a recruiter, and that's ultimately going to kickstart the interview process. As I've mentioned up here, it was applying and then leveraging recruiters to ultimately get interviews. That is exactly this part here. And then from here, that leads into the first stage technical interview. So with the first stage technical interview, you're going to be meeting one of the first members from the team. It may be HR, it may just be a normal technical interview. And that's going to be asking technical questions to you to understand if you would be a good fit for the role. Now, if you perform well in the first stage, you'll then get transferred into the second stage typically, which is also going to be another technical interview. It's typically going to be with someone else as well, with different questions. Maybe there'll be some overlapped questions, but more or less it will be different. And that's ultimately going to be assessing your technical skill set and how you answer those questions specifically. From there, it then leads into the third stage, which is typically a behavioral, aka a human resources, HR interview, which is ultimately assessing the fit of yourself within the company, the culture, and asking you certain questions regarding it to see how you will respond and also interact when you're actually in the company. So it'll be things like, tell me a time where you handled a conflict and how did you go about doing that? Tell me a time where you had a problem and you didn't know how to solve it. What did you do? Those kinds of questions, those are going to be in the behavioral interview. Now, it's important that I mention that every company is going to have a slightly different process. Some will have multiple different technical stages. For example, FANG and fintech companies, they can have up to 7-stage technical interviews. And some other companies may potentially have the behavioral first as the first stage, and then the second technical in the third stage, right? So they may slightly depend and change it, but this is ultimately the ones that you're going to be following from start to finish to ultimately get that offer. So that's what you should be doing for interviews. Now, the interviews, if you're successful, they therefore then lead to offers. So for the offers, you're going to be entering a negotiation meeting. Now that meeting is not an interview, it's more of a conversation, and you're not going to be tested on anything really, but it's going to be making sure that everybody is on the same page, you understand what to expect, they understand what to expect, and how to move forward with the offer if you wish to accept. So it's going to be detailing some of the following. So the offer negotiation stage is going to be typically a meeting with HR or a recruiter, and it's going to be discussing your start date if you wish to accept, your contract, so actually sending that out to you and getting that signed, your compensation as well, which is of course a key aspect, so how much you're actually going to be paid and what you're worth, and also the benefits that you're going to be entitled to and eligible for as well. Now for the compensation, since this is an aspect that I get asked the most for either my students or people in my DMs for how to actually negotiate compensation correctly, well, here is an example of how to do it. So you have the end of the band here, you can pick whatever number that you wish to be the end, and then you also have a top over here as well. And this is a box and whisker plot diagram, because ideally what you have is you have this dotted line in the middle, which is the actual middle of the range. So you've got the middle, so you've got the lowest, you've got the top, then you've got the middle. You want to choose 60 to 85% of the range of the actual budget range for that position. So essentially, when companies are actually applying, they do have a budget in mind from start to finish, from low to high. And that's because they may find an okay candidate, which they want to offer the lower end of that range. And they may find an exceptional candidate with loads of experience who's worked at lots of different companies, and they'll actually be at the top of the range. So they need to have a range because it does depend on the candidate. And as we mentioned and discussed before, they don't actually know what their ideal candidate is, but they have a rough idea. That's why the range is there. So ideally for you, you want to make sure that you're choosing 60 to 85% of the range, and this is based on the value that you genuinely feel like you can provide to the company. If you can provide them solid value that genuinely transitions the company into a better state, then you should be much higher on that range, so 85% perhaps. Whereas if you feel like you can provide a lot of value, but perhaps it could be more over the next coming 6 to 12 months, then maybe you choose something lower, like maybe say 60%. You should never go below 50% because that shows that it shows a perceived lack of confidence in your skill set, which may potentially reflect to the companies that you may not be the best fit for the position, and that they may actually wish to rescind your offer and give it to someone else. So it's very important that you don't go anything below the 50% of the budget range, and you stay between the confines of 60 to 85%. Now, we're going to be covering over some bottlenecks now. So if you're having any of the bottlenecks, this is going to be likely the solutions to actually solve those problems. So some of the bottlenecks that you can face is being rejected before interviews and being rejected after interviews. It can be ghosted, meaning that you never actually hear back from the company itself, and they may just they won't even send you an unfortunately email, they'll just straight up ghost you and they won't actually respond. And also failing interviews as well. These are the 3 common types of bottlenecks that you can face or candidates face in general for the tech roles that they're going for. So ghosted, essentially the solution to this and kind of how to solve this, well, ghosted means that you're not actually high value enough yet, right? So you're not providing enough value or demonstrating the value that you can provide to companies to ultimately get you hired and make them want to hire you. So make sure that you're doing that. And it's going to be anything that you've actually done before you got ghosted, right? So if you got ghosted after an interview, it's going to be everything leading up to that interview, that final one you've had. If you got ghosted just before interviews, then it's going to be everything that you've submitted just before interviews. So it can help in terms of identifying the bottleneck there. Now, if you're rejected, it means that you did not match the job description enough to actually be awarded an interview. So you need to make sure that you are articulating yourself correctly based on the job description in your cover letter and CV to ultimately prevent the chances of you being rejected. So that is going to be one of the main aspects. Now, for rejected after an interview, this means that you did not showcase enough technical skill sets and also in the correct way with the correct perception to ultimately be awarded either A, another interview, or B, the actual offer that you're looking for. So these bottlenecks, if you take these into consideration, these can actually help you fix those bottlenecks and actually get ahead of the competition and go for the roles that you're actually going for. Most people will typically rely on hope and luck to break into tech, and hope and luck is not a viable strategy. And the reason for that is because you can't actually make results from things that are varied, right? You can't make continuous, strong, proven results with strategies that are going to be hope and luck, because it's going to be, one day you'll get lucky, one day you won't, one day you'll hope for something and it will come true, one day it won't. So it's very kind of up in the air, and it's not something you can actually rely on. So what you actually need, and this is something that you're most likely missing if you're relying on hope and luck and you're a little bit stuck, but you need systems. You need systems that you can heavily rely on, regardless of the days, regardless of how lucky or how hopeful you feel on that particular day, to ultimately generate the results that you ideally are wanting to get. So this is going to be coming with the guidance, with strategies, with systems that you've implemented in place, following the 3-step process that I discussed earlier, and potentially even working with a mentor. If you work with a mentor, you can actually get that support and get that guidance to know that you're always going to be on the right track as well. But it's very important to not rely on hope and luck, because that's what most candidates do. And if you want exceptional results and not to have the same results as every other candidate out there, which is typically struggling for the tech roles that you're looking for, then you do need some level of systems. Now, we're going to be moving into talking about perception now. So perception, it's all about how you're seen by other people. So how you're perceived is how you're seen by other people, and it plays a key role in terms of being hired for tech. If you're seen as weak, desperate, or needy, it shows that companies cannot rely on you to deliver consistent, good value to them, because they don't have confidence in your skill set, because you're not showing confidence in your skill set. You need to demonstrate your skill sets in a way that shows confidence and the value that you can provide, right? And I've got another point about this in just a moment, but this is why your portfolios are needed, right? And this is why they're so important, because you need to build up this perception and this aura in interviews once actually showcasing it on your portfolios from your skill sets. Now, the sub point is going to be the value exchange. The value exchange is something that's so important for tech, right? And for landing a tech role. It's all about value exchange. So you provide value to a company by solving their technical problems that they need someone to fix. And in return, they provide you value of a high income, benefits, remote work, free food, free drink, and the experience. So you're providing value to them, and they're providing value back to you. And that is exactly how it works in terms of breaking into tech. If you do this, you will literally break into tech and follow the 3-step process. But it's very important that you actually build out systems and you actually have some level of support there as well that can help you get to the finish line. The more value you can provide, the more value you will get in return. And I like the kind of quote and kind of mindset of that you are paid exactly what you're worth at any given time. If you feel like you're being underpaid, right, that's a feeling. Maybe that's the case, but ultimately most people are paid more or less what they're worth based on the value that they can provide. So if you can solve really hard, nuanced, complex problems for companies and businesses in the tech field, you're going to be provided even more value back in return for that. And that's going to be in the form of extra compensation, so higher salary, better, bigger benefits, better experience, bigger companies, that kind of stuff. So if you always have that mindset of I'm being paid exactly what I'm worth now, and even if you're not, let's say it's a little bit off, well, in the next 3 to 6 months, you're going to be paid what you're worth, because you'll just simply move companies or you'll get given a promotion or something like that. But the more value that you can provide to companies, the more value you're going to get in return. Oh, wow guys, that's quite a lot of information. What a ride. We've kind of just broken down every single aspect of break into tech. So all of this stuff, right, it's essentially my life's work at this point. It took me a total of 6 years to develop this knowledge that I'm sharing with you here today. It's been a lot of studying, a lot of knowledge building, trials and errors, rejections, failing interviews, ultimately to get to the position I'm into today at the top of the tech industry. So I literally just dropped all of this knowledge for you guys, and I hope that you're feeling more confident in terms of what tech requires now and where potentially you were going wrong and how to actually fix that with the information that I've shared with you here today. And by the way guys, if you want some more help with this kind of stuff and like the more so detailed specifics, then you can actually book in a call with me via this link on the screen. I'll also pop this link in the top of the description as well for this video. And we can actually hop on a call and I can actually help you more in terms of this kind of stuff. Now, if you've came from Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, just feel free to shoot me back over a message, like a DM or a reply, and then we can just kind of pick it up from there. We can have a bit more of a conversation and see how I can help you further. But that's pretty much everything for the free training. Hopefully you found this very valuable. I'll see you in the future and maybe in some of the other videos as well.